How's it going?
Good. How about you?
Doing good, doing good. I've been on the other end of a lot of podcasts, so this is really cool to be on my own podcast. Kind of have a little bit of time, but more importantly, get to know a little bit more about genealogy. I think that's a topic that is tossed around, but not a lot of us know exactly what it is or what it means or kind of what that process looks like. So I guess just kind of at a high level, could you explain what genealogy is for a lot of people that might not know exactly what it is and kind of how you go about, just practicing that in everyday life and how it's become a part of your life as a career?
Well, interestingly enough, you said this is your first time being the interviewer on the podcast. This is my first time being on a podcast, so I'll do my best. So genealogy is actually the study of family lineage and tracing family lines back in history. And what I do is called forensic genealogy. And what differentiates that from regular genealogy is that, to make it short, forensic genealogy is genealogical research with a legal or a criminal consequence or ramification at the end, whereas just traditional genealogy is more focused on just family histories and personal histories.
Okay.
And when people think of the word forensic, they almost always think of, oh my gosh, it's a crime solver using DNA and working with the police. And that is one area of forensic genealogy.
Yeah, I think about like that show Bones.
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard of that, but like
Yes.
forensic, that gives me like that pops back into my head.
Yes.
And anytime I hear that, I always think back to like crime TV shows and stuff like that. So,
Yes, and those
yeah.
are genetic genealogists, and
Okay.
that's what they do. They
Sure.
use a DNA sample from a victim or from a suspect that has no hits in the CODIS system. They're working typically with law enforcement, and then they use commercial DNA databases to find distant relatives of that person and to build out a family tree in hopes of circling it back to identify either the victim or the suspect. Whereas what I do is the other side of forensic genealogy, and that's the legal part. So I find missing or unknown heirs to estates or unclaimed property. I work primarily with attorneys and the courts, fiduciaries, trying to build out family trees to find heirs where someone has died without a will.
Yeah, okay.
And so it might be a multi-million-dollar estate. And
Yeah.
we know that the neighbor said that the guy had a cousin that maybe lived on the East Coast. And so somebody has to find the family so that the case can be taken to probate and the estate can be distributed.
Okay.
And then also in conjunction with that, there is proving relationships for immigration cases or people that want to get citizenship based on their grandfather was a citizen in some country, or they want to have access to vital records, so proving family relationships.
Wonderful. That is amazing. I think just for both me and the audience in general to kind of understand what that is in a grander scale. But you mentioned genealogy in your specific use case, finding lost heirs, but also in immigration cases. I think that genealogy is very interesting in the fact that there's so many use cases for it. In a lot of cases that I myself or a lot of people in the audience might not have thought that there was a use for genealogists or genealogy as a science in general. Could you tell me a little bit more about just the history of genealogy and how it's evolved over the years, and just from your perspective as you got more into it and you've taken specific courses or certifications on genealogy itself?
Well, I think the advent of the internet has
drastically helped, I'm sure,
yeah,
connect people.
probably transformed it transformed it most of all. And then also with the addition now of the DNA evidence that we have, I think that it's a person can research the records that they need a lot more quickly than traveling to every repository around the country or around the world where something might be located, and even find out where things are located instead of just taking a guess and saying, oh, well, maybe it's in a church in Bavaria.
Yeah, I'm sure like
small town. I'm going to take a trip and find out.
The World Wide Web makes data access and record keeping a lot more accessible. So tell me a little bit more about the tools that you use. Either it can be like a system or like a software or like an actual instrument that you use on the job that helps you conduct what you do.
So again, would be online databases. And I always, to be honest, I almost always start after getting the initial information from the client or the law firm or whoever it is providing me the information. I almost always go immediately to Ancestry just as a default and type in the person's name and see what comes up. And that just kind of gives me a thought process of how I'm going to proceed with this. And then, from there, it can go in any number of directions. I'm working on a case right now in Brooklyn, New York. So the Brooklyn Public Library and the New York Public Library and the NYU Library and the Historical Society are all really good resources, and they've got a lot of stuff online. I'm also finding that there's a lot of resources that I know I need that aren't online, so I'm having to get in touch with researchers in New York City to go to the repositories and search for me. But it can really just go anywhere. And when there's family history involved, or in an estate where maybe the attorney or the fiduciary, the trust administrator who's asked me to find the heirs, maybe they have access to the estate, and maybe in that estate, in the personal property, there's a box or two boxes of just random family memorabilia. I've gone through boxes of thank you notes and newspaper clippings and obituaries and old phone books, that people handwrite their address books in, and found a lot of information that way. So it can just go in any number of directions. There's no case is ever the same, and it's not an exact science. It just goes.
Sure. I'm sure it takes somebody that's quick to think on their feet and is very resourceful, such as yourself, to connect the dots on these, pretty mysterious, in some cases, mysterious cases where there might not be a whole lot of information at hand, but like you just got to take it one step at a time and, use your resources and connect those dots. What is the craziest or most out of the ordinary thing that you found as you've gone through people's estates and kind of dealt with those different types of either physical objects or just pieces of memorabilia?
I don't think there's ever been a case where something isn't crazy.
It keeps your job interesting, I assume.
To be honest with you, something always comes up. One of my favorite cases, and it's one of my favorites because I almost gave up, and I have never let any case beat me up until this point, knock on wood. I almost gave up because I thought I was like, this lady, okay, she truly doesn't have any family. I can't find her. I don't get it. I know there has to be records of her somewhere, and there just isn't. Well, it turns out that she had multiple husbands, and the one that I was looking at that I thought was her first husband and the father of her disabled child that had died, turns out that was actually her second husband. But I was thinking, because I just took it for word from my client that was her maiden name that I was looking at, and then when I found their marriage record of her what was really her second husband, I just assumed that the name on the marriage record was her maiden name. And as I mentioned, she had this child, and there was multiple newspaper articles because the child, this was in the 60s and 70s, and as the child grew up, he had been institutionalized and apparently been badly abused at the hands of the institution. So there was all these newspaper articles, and it listed this couple as the kid's parents.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that that wasn't her maiden name at all. It was her married name. And in order to arrive at that conclusion, and like I said, this was in the 60s, so the second husband was in 1966, and the child was born in 1960.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked away from my computer. I actually went, it was when I was living in Colorado, I went for a little walk in the mountains, and I just had to pull myself out of it. Mm-hmm. And come back in, and I thought, okay, put yourself in that lady's shoes. It's 1960. There's 6 years between the birth of the child and the marriage. That didn't happen in the 60s. Women did not have a child in 1960 and keep it and not get married. It just didn't happen. So I thought, oh my gosh, that has to be a married name. And I remembered this teeny tiny little directory entry that I had seen on Ancestry that I shrugged off 29 times because I thought it was just this insignificant piece of information. I went back and found that, and sure enough, it said Mrs. Michael blank. And I was like, oh my God. So I looked up the Michael. Yeah. And sure enough, found their marriage certificate, and then found that this woman who had died with no family, had 5 siblings, all of which were still living. And I found all of them, and it was like the most craziest thing because I thought I was beat.
Just took a quick walk to clear your head.
Yeah, it's all really the biggest thing that you can do when you're looking for information like that and you're just stumped is just to take yourself outside of it and then go back into, try to get into that person's life. Okay, this is the year. This is what was typical in this year.
Yep.
Where would I be? Where would they be?
Yeah, and you kind of have to put yourself in their shoes, not only from like a physical standpoint of like where they were on, you know, in the country or in the state, but like from a mental standpoint as well. Like, how were they thinking? Have you ever? So was that probably one of the hardest cases that you've ever had to work in to really get to the end goal?
I don't think it was the hardest. It just stumped me long enough that I started to get really questioning my ability to find the answer I was looking for. But once I found that, then it was actually fairly straightforward, in the fact that everybody was still alive and they were actually really easy to find, because that's a challenge too sometimes, you know, putting it back together from the history part up to the present, and then you use all the living people databases, and you know there might be 2,000 Michael Smiths that are living. So you have to identify who they're connected to and kind of get a general idea of what area of the country you're going to search, and
so
to make sure you get the right people.
What are like the top 3 things that you look for to help identify or lead you to the next step with finding out what the end goal, or who the individuals that you're looking for in the end goal are? Like, is it date of births? Is it like maiden name? Like, what are the 3 characteristics of like the people that you could say help you the most with what you do?
I don't know if there's actually characteristics. You just kind of have to take the information you're given and try to do something with it. If people have names, first names, last names, maiden names, married names, dates of birth, dates of death, if people have that and you know that it's correct, it's from a death certificate that they're handing you, or it's something like that, then that's really useful.
Okay.
A lot of times people, memories fade. So a lot of times you get information, especially from families and, they're related to George Washington, but really they live, their grandma lived 2 towns, or their great ancestor lived 2 towns over from George Washington and waved at him once when he was, riding his horse by.
So it's kind of like hearsay if it's not official.
Yeah. And, I always take what people give me because 9 times out of 10, there's some truth in that, but you got to check and double check everything. And then it's really interesting to come back, especially with families, and say, well, I know this is what you thought, but it wasn't exactly accurate. So I don't know that there's any 1 or 2 things that make it better. I think that it just, you kind of just roll with
kind of a case by case scenario.
Yeah. It's solving a mystery.
Yep.
It's the thrill of the chase.
Awesome.
It's almost an addictive job other than writing the papers. That's the,
Well, you might be the closest thing to a real-life Sherlock Holmes that we have here in the studio today. So thank you so much, Jessica. Appreciated learning a little bit more about your story and genealogy, the wonders that it is. So thank you so much. I really appreciate learning a little bit more about that.
Lauren.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Will with the Podcast Crew team. Spotlight is a vidcast shot at the Podcast Crew Studios in Minneapolis. We would love for you to be our guest. Email us at the email address on your screen below to get a copy of the upcoming schedule. It's free, it's easy, and it's a great way to try out a podcast or a vidcast with our pro team. We do an in-person, in-studio version if you're in the Twin Cities area, and also an online version if you're somewhere else. We'd love to have you, hear your story, and help you start your podcast journey. Thanks. Get in touch today.